In the heart of Aurora Station, where neon lights flicker against steel walls and pilots trade war stories over cheap drinks, a quiet stranger sits alone at the bar. She looks ordinary, just another traveler waiting for her transport. But when a boastful captain pushes too far and demands her call sign, the single name she whispers stops the entire room cold, leaving veterans pale, commanders on edge, and one question burning. Who is the woman they now call Shadow 9? Inside the main concourse, a bar glowed with neon lights, pulling in merchants, workers, and off-duty soldiers from every corner of the system. The air carried a mix of recycled oxygen, synthetic alcohol, and the faint traces of alien spices brought in from distant worlds. Voices overlapped in many languages. Laughter rose and fell, and the crackle of a holographic dartboard drew cheers from a table of pilots. The bar was not elegant, but it was alive, and it was the kind of place where stories began. In the middle of it all sat a woman named Lyra Marin. She was 32, dressed in a plain jacket and well-worn boots. Her clothes said she was a traveler, someone passing through rather than belonging. She sat at the counter with a bottle of imported earth ale, a rare drink that cost more than most workers earned in a week. She sipped it slowly, as if stretching time. Her dark hair was pulled back simply, and the colored lights of the bar shifted across her calm face. She scrolled through a tablet, eyes steady, body language relaxed, yet detached, as if she were waiting for something or someone. The bartender, a heavy-set alien with thick arms and shifting violet skin, refilled her glass without needing to be asked. His kind had grown up on worlds with high gravity, making them strong and steady by nature. He had tended this bar for decades, and he noticed details others missed. Tonight, he noticed how still Lyra was, how she seemed to occupy the bar without needing to claim it. His skin flickered in a neutral shade of violet, the mark of polite courtesy. As he rumbled, "Slow night again, traveler," Lyra gave him a faint smile. "I've seen worse nights," she answered softly, her tone easy but distant. Behind her, noise rose from a group of pilots in their dark uniforms. 7 of them, 5 human and 2 from other species, gathered near the dartboard. Their laughter carried across the room. At the center of the group stood Captain Ronan Hale. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a voice that could cut through any noise, Ronan lived to be heard. Every story he told seemed larger than life. He was the kind of man who drew attention whether he wanted it or not, though he always wanted it. "There we were," Ronan declared, his voice booming across the room. 3 sectors from friendly space, nav systems fried, raiders closing fast. And what do? We fly blind, that's what. Instinct and training alone. The pilots around him nodded, even though they had heard the tale before. Other patrons turned their heads too, because stories of danger had a way of catching ears, no matter how many times they had been told. Ronan thrived on the attention, stretching every pause for effect, filling every silence with his presence. Lyra's tablet screen dimmed as her fingers stilled. She did not look directly at the pilot, but something in her posture shifted, as though she was listening more carefully now. The bartender noticed. He always noticed. She was not just another traveler passing the time. There was something beneath her quiet exterior, something she was not showing. Ronan's eyes scanned the room and landed on her. Her stillness caught his attention the way a shadow moves in a crowded space. In his experience, civilians at military bars leaned in, eager to belong, eager to hear more. But this woman sat apart, calm, detached, and entirely unshaken by his performance. He grinned. He saw her composure not as a wall, but as a challenge. He pushed his empty glass to the counter, slapped a teammate on the back, and moved toward her with the kind of confidence that expected to be welcomed everywhere. The bartender tensed. He had seen this kind of moment before. Loud voices meeting quiet strength. He watched closely as Ronan slid onto the stool beside Lyra, flashing his easy charm. "Haven't seen you around here before," Ronan said. "You fleet? Or just here for the atmosphere?" His tone was light, but it carried that edge of performance, as though the entire bar was his stage and this quiet stranger was his newest audience. Lyra lifted her gaze from the tablet. Her green eyes met his directly, calm and unblinking. Her voice was quiet but clear. "Just passing through. My transport leaves in 6 hours." She turned her attention back to her drink, as if dismissing the importance of the moment. But the bar felt a subtle shift. The pilots by the dartboard leaned in slightly, sensing the start of something. Conversation slowed, and in that quiet hum of curiosity, the stranger's secret began to take shape, though no one yet knew the weight of it. Ronan Hale leaned his elbows on the counter, his smile broad and practiced. He had been in bars like this all across the system, and he knew the rhythm well. A story told loud enough, a laugh big enough, and most crowds fell into his orbit. But this woman, this traveler sitting calmly with her imported earth ale, was different. She did not flinch under his gaze. She did not lean forward to show interest. She looked at him as if he were just another passing voice in the noise of the station. "Transport, huh?" Ronan said, keeping his tone light. "Let me guess. Mining colony run? Or maybe some science mission on a frozen moon?" He chuckled, waiting for a reaction. Lyra Marin took another sip of her drink, her face unreadable. "Something like that," she said. Her words were short, quiet, and steady, but they carried a weight that unsettled him. The bar grew more attentive. Conversations dulled, not silent, but softer, like a wave pulling back before it strikes again. The pilots at the dartboard smirked, sensing their captain was about to perform. Ronan straightened, making sure his voice carried. "So what's your story then? You don't look like a tourist. You look like someone who thinks too much. Maybe an academic? Some kind of professor?" Lyra did not rise to the bait. Her eyes lifted to meet his once amend. "I finished my studies. Conflict recovery. My work is with people displaced by war." Her tone was even, her words simple, but the effect spread across the room. A few older veterans shifted uncomfortably in their seats, recognizing weight behind her calm. Ronan laughed, but the laugh came too quickly, too sharp. "Conflict recovery," he repeated for his teammates to hear. "That's impressive. But you know, we do a lot of conflict recovery in my job too. Just more kinetic." His squadron chuckled, following his lead. The bartender, wiping down glasses nearby, watched closely. His violet skin shifted toward orange, a quiet sign of unease. He had learned to read danger not in raised voices, but in the small tightening of a jaw, the way eyes sharpened, and he saw it now in Lyra. She was calm, but beneath the calm was something Steele could not see. Ronan leaned closer, the smell of whiskey clinging to him. "You ever been in real combat?" he asked, his voice louder now, meant for everyone around them. "Not sims, not training, but real fire, real enemies trying to kill you?" His words cut through the background chatter, and a hush spread across the bar. Lyra's fingers tightened around her bottle, just for a moment, then relaxed. Her voice came low and steady. "I imagine that kind of experience is rare." Ronan seized on it, his grin widening. "Rare, yes, and that's what makes us different. That's what separates warriors from scholars. Anyone can read about combat, but when missiles lock onto your ship and your wingman's gone, that's when you learn who you are." He gestured toward his squadron. "That's what we live with. That's what makes us real." The crowd listened. Some nodded, some frowned. Lyra remained still. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken questions. Ronan, sensing the moment slipping, pressed harder. "Tell me, Professor," he said with a mocking edge, "do you even know what a call sign is? It's not something they teach in your books." The word professor hung in the air like smoke. Some of the younger pilots laughed, but the older veterans shifted again, their eyes on the woman at the bar. Lyra lifted her chin slightly. Her tone did not rise, but her words carried far. A call sign is a designation earned. It is not just given. It carries the story of a pilot's reputation, a mark that defines them among their peers. The bar went still. Ronan's grin faltered, then recovered. "Well, look at that. Did you look that up just now on your tablet?" He forced a laugh, looking back at his squadron for support. But knowing the definition and actually having one are two very different things. He leaned back, confident again. "So tell us, traveler, do you have one?" The silence that followed stretched long. The hum of the station, the faint electronic chime from the dartboard, all seemed distant. Lyra lifted her drink, took a slow sip, and set it down carefully. Then she looked at Ronan directly, her green eyes unwavering. Her voice came low, almost a whisper, but it reached every ear in the room. "Shadow 9. The effect was instant. Ronan's glass slipped from his fingers, the sound of it striking the counter sharper than any shout. Liquid spread across the bar, small spheres floating before the containment field caught them. Conversations froze. Even the music seemed to hesitate. The name carried power, a weight not seen but deeply felt. Veterans exchanged glances. One old officer muttered under his breath and slowly stood, moving toward the exit. The bartender stopped wiping his glass, his skin shifting to a deep shade of blue. The young pilots stared wide-eyed, unsure whether to laugh or believe. And Ronan, for the first time all evening, had no words. The stranger had spoken, and her shadow stretched across the room. The silence in Aurora Station's bar was heavy, as though the very air had been drawn out of the room. The name hung there, echoing louder than any voice. Shadow 9. A call sign spoken in a whisper, yet powerful enough to freeze laughter and cut through bravado. It was not just a name. It was a story, a legend, a memory that older veterans carried like a scar. Captain Ronan Hale stared at Lyra Marin, his face pale. The swagger that had filled him moments earlier drained away. He wanted to laugh, to say it was a joke, but his instincts told him otherwise. The way she had spoken, calm and precise, was not the voice of someone playing games. It was the voice of someone who had lived through fire. A murmur moved through the crowd. Two traders from the outer at a corner table. A retired commander named Celine Morgan froze mid-conversation. She had once carried scars from battles the public never knew about. Her eyes narrowed. She knew the name. She had read it in classified reports that most officers never had clearance to see. She knew what Shadow 9 meant. Celine excused herself quietly, pulling out a small communicator. She stepped into the back corner, where noise was thin and shadows deep. Her voice, low and urgent, reached out to a contact she had hoped she would never need again. "Command, this is Morgan. I need to report a positive identification. Shadow 9 is here. Repeat, Shadow 9 is alive and present on Aurora Station." She paused, hearing the startled reply on the other end, then added, "Situation delicate. Immediate guidance required." Back at the bar, Ronan forced out a laugh that rang hollow. "You're lying," he said, but the words had no weight. His squadron, who moments before had chuckled at every line, now watched him in silence, unsure of their place. One of the younger pilots looked ready to speak, then thought better of it. Lyra moved slowly, deliberately. She reached into her jacket and placed a small identification card on the counter. It was unlike any standard military ID. Its surface shimmered faintly with security patterns that shifted as if alive, carrying signatures only high command would recognize. Ronan leaned closer, his eyes scanning the impossible. What he saw drained the last of his color. The proof was undeniable. The bartender, who had served countless travelers in this place, shifted his heavy frame closer, his skin now glowing a dark, worried blue. He had no need to read the card. The body language around him told him everything. The quiet stranger at his counter was not simply passing through. She was someone who had once carried the weight of impossible missions, someone whose existence was not meant to be public knowledge. The veterans in the room understood. They sat straighter, remembering rumors from years past. Stories told behind closed doors about a lone pilot who had turned the tide of battles that never officially happened. The name Shadow 9 was tied to sacrifice, to survival against impossible odds, to lives saved at unthinkable cost. To them, seeing her alive was like seeing a ghost step out of history. Ronan's mouth opened, but no words came. Pride, arrogance, all vanished in the presence of the legend. All of it had been stripped from him in an instant. He stared at Lyra, not as a civilian, not as someone to impress, but as something beyond his measure. His hands trembled as he tried to steady his drink, only to realize it was already gone, spilled across the bar in his shock. Celine Morgan returned from recall, her expression tight with concern. She had no need to explain what she had done. Everyone in her eyes could see that higher authorities now knew, and the station would soon feel their reach. She sat down again, her gaze never leaving Lyra. The crowd remained hushed. The energy of the bar transformed into something reverent, almost fearful. Every movement seemed slower, every sound sharper. The neon glow reflected off Lyra's calm face, a face that gave nothing away. She sat as if nothing had changed, yet everything had shifted. Then a single question slipped from Ronan's lips, his voice cracked and almost broken. How? How are you here just sitting at this bar? Lyra's green eye. She was here, real, alive, and her presence was a reminder of sacrifices made in silence. As the station continued to turn outside the windows, the crowd in the bar waited. They did not know what would happen next, but they knew they were standing at the edge of something larger than themselves, something that reached beyond stories told in laughter. Shadow 9 had returned, and with her came the weight of revelation. The doors of the bar opened with a hiss, and the atmosphere shifted again. 3 figures entered, moving with the calm authority of people used to controlling difficult situations. At their head was Captain Mara Devlin, dressed in plain clothes, but her bearing carried the weight of command. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, landing first on Celine Morgan, then on the quiet woman at the counter. Lyra Marin did not need to turn to know they were there. Her posture adjusted almost imperceptibly, the kind of instinct that never truly left a person who had lived through battles. She finished her drink and placed the bottle down gently, her expression still calm. Captain Devlin stepped closer, her voice steady but firm. "Miss Marin, I am Captain Mara Devlin, Strategic Operations Command. We need to discuss what just happened here." The words were polite, but the undertone was clear. This was more than a casual visit. Lyra turned to face her fully, her gaze steady. "Captain, nothing classified was shared. A question was asked, and I gave an answer. I revealed only a name and nothing more." Devlin studied her carefully, weighing her words. "Names can carry power," she said, "especially yours. Shadow 9 is not just a call sign. It is a symbol, one tied to events that remain highly sensitive." Ronan Hale, still sitting frozen at the bar, finally found his voice. "Captain, this was my fault," he said, his words unsteady. "I was showing off. I pushed her. I didn't know who she was." His admission was clumsy, but it carried the raw truth of a man who had realized the depth of his mistake. Devlin's gaze shifted to him, cool and sharp. "Lieutenant, What you did was create a security breach. You treated a public space as a stage for your pride, and in doing so, you pulled a legend out of the shadows. Ronan swallowed hard. His squadron, standing at the back of the bar, lowered their eyes, knowing better than to intervene. The weight of the moment pressed on them all. Before Devlin could continue, Lyra raised a hand gently. "Captain, I appreciate your concern, but let us be honest, there has been no breach. Only a lesson, one that perhaps needed to be learned." She turned her eyes to Ronan, and her calm voice carried through the hushed bar. True strength is not measured by the stories we tell in loud voices. It is measured in silence, in humility, in the choices we make when no one is watching. Ronan met her gaze, and for once, he did not argue. His pride had been stripped away, and what remained was a young officer finally beginning to understand. The tension in the room softened. Though the respect remained, Devlin exhaled slowly and gave a small nod. "Perhaps you are right, Miss Marin. Perhaps the lesson here is worth more than the risk." She signaled to her team to stand down, and the weight in the bar eased slightly. As the agents withdrew to the edges of the room, another figure approached quietly. Ensign Alina Cade, no older than 23, her uniform crisp but her eyes full of uncertainty. She hesitated, then stepped forward. "Ma'am," she said softly, addressing Lyra, "are you truly Shadow 9? Lyra looked at her, seeing the raw determination in her face. She saw herself, younger, hungrier, searching for purpose. "I was," Lyra replied gently. "But now I am simply Lyra Marin, a woman trying to find new meaning." Alina hesitated, then asked the question that had weighed heavy in her. "How do you live with it? How do you carry what you've done and still find a way to move forward?" Lyra considered her carefully. Her voice softened, not for the crowd, but for the young pilot before her. "You do not forget. You do not erase. The memories remain, and the scars remain. But you learn to live beside them. You find new battles, smaller ones, but no less important. You help people who cannot help themselves. You carry lessons from the past into futures that deserve better." Alina nodded, her eyes bright. The words sank deep, planting seeds she would carry for years. Minutes later, Lyra rose from her stool. She placed a credit chip on the counter and gave the bartender a nod of quiet thanks. Then she picked up her jacket and tablet. "Captain," she said, looking at Devlin one last time, "the shadows belong to the past. I choose to walk in the present." She moved toward the exit. Ronan stood as she passed, his voice low. "Thank you for the lesson." She gave him a faint smile, one that carried no triumph, only understanding. Outside the bar, the station stretched in long corridors lit with soft neon. Beyond the viewports, the stars turned slowly as the station rotated. Lyra walked through the crowds, blending back into the flow of ordinary life. And for the first time in years, she felt free. Not as Shadow 9, not as a legend whispered in secure reports, but as Lyra Marin, a woman who had survived, who had chosen peace over war, and who now carried her lessons beneath the stars.